Well, good morning. Those of you who know me well may be surprised to learn that the field of study in which I, shy, awkward, nerdy, bookwormy Professor Shackleford, have the most dedicated professional education is as an actor. I have an associate's degree, a Bachelor of Arts with honors, and a Master of Fine Arts with honors, all in the dramatic arts. Imagine. That MFA, the master's program, was where I finally learned the bitter truth that there are people who are cut out for the live performance business and people who are not, and I'm squarely in the latter camp. I couldn't be a professional working actor if you paid me. In fact, really the only thing I have in common with professional actors is that nobody's paying them either. What I learned during the 3 years I was in that 2-year MFA program, though, was that I'm a lot more interested in writing the words that go into the actors' little pink mouths than I am in being one of those people who says the words that other people have written for them. And that has been my career ever since, and I have absolutely no regrets. So why am I telling you this? What possible relevance can it have to our 11 o'clock seeking of spiritual enlightenment? Well, it's simply this, that in my studies of the art and craft of acting, I learned a foundation principle that has implications far beyond stage and screen. And so I'll need to back up some and explain that. You may not know that our whole concept of what acting means changed. The joke is inevitable. It changed dramatically at the turn of the last century. From the dawn of live theater back in ancient Greece until about until the teens or 20s, acting was largely about the beauty of the actor's voice and about the power of physical attitudes that he or she could choose to communicate the emotions that they were supposed to be experiencing. Our earliest films survive as a record of that previous day of what acting was supposed to be all about. You look at a film from 1915, say, and you'll see actors sort of striking these poses. And we think of that as comical today because it's so exaggerated, but so obviously false very often. But 100 years ago, this sort of visual language was understood to be, when done well, beautiful and honest and powerful. Well, then a revolution happened in Russia. Not that revolution, another quieter one. This one in the arts. Actors, directors, and playwrights started talking about a new style, a new method of approaching the theater arts, a type of play in which actors would present real emotions on the stage, communicating truth and honesty as it had never been done before. And so you may know the name Konstantin Stanislavski. Somewhere along the way you may have heard that. He was the champion of this cause as a director and an acting teacher. And his teachings and writings changed, well, everything, first in Europe and then in America. And I'm finally getting to the point. Stanislavski's teachings are built on this one profound observation, that a realistic character is in pursuit of a strong, simple objective. And once you, the actor, understand what your character's objective is from moment to moment, then you can step into that character's shoes and bring him or her to life in a way that the audience will recognize as being identical to the lives they lead and that they see others live. I have a perfect flashbulb of this, a moment when my acting teacher in the MFA program, a fierce and frightening man from Latvia, he was directing me in a scene from a play, and I don't even remember what play this was, but it's a moment of tension between two characters, two men who are at odds with one another. And the scene is written so that my character is having trouble getting a word in edgewise. And my frustration is supposed to be mounting. We played the scene, and Professor Stromanis, he said he didn't believe a word of it. "Try it again," he said. "But first, tell me, Mr. Shackleford, what is it that your character wants?" And I said, "I want the other guy to stop talking." And he said, "No!" That's the kind of theater program this was. You cannot act that objective. You cannot show us someone who wants someone else to do something. What do you want? And this is the moment where the whole concept really finally clicked for me. I said, I want to do all the talking. I want to say what I want to say. And he said, just as loudly as that no, yes! But I said, still feeling a little helpless here, the script doesn't let me be the one who talks. He's got all the lines. And he said, exactly. But with what lines you have, you must live the reality that you want to be the one who talks. We played the scene again, and I could feel it. And apparently out in the audience, he could feel it too. And this mean old man actually applauded when we ended that scene. Something real had transpired. So as I learned and practiced more, I grew to understand this principle better and better. The Stanislavski approach is all about constantly asking yourself, as the character, what do you want? And how bad do you want it? The power, I think, of Stanislavski's idea is how we can realistically impersonate real life, is that it is such a profound observation about how real life is lived. We want. We all have things that we want, moment to moment, instant by instant, every day that we're awake and alive. Some of them are large, some of them are small. In fact, some of them are colossal, and some are infinitesimal, but they are always there, just out of our reach, every second, constantly changing, perpetually moving into and out of our field of vision. In fact, it's not too much to say that our objectives, our goals, our drives are so central to our very being, so powerful in shaping our personalities, that we are what we want. And even though this energy, this dynamic is ceaselessly at work in our lives, for the most part, we remain oblivious to it. We're aware that we're uncomfortable sometimes, or maybe that we feel somehow unfulfilled, but unless we've identified what our objectives are, we have no hope of attaining them. I think typically we don't even know that we want something, much less have a clear idea of what it is. You may know this exchange from Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, between Alice and the Cheshire Cat. Alice asks the cat, who's sitting on a branch in the tree, "Could you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" And the Cheshire Cat says, "That depends a good deal on where you want to go." "I don't much care where," said Alice. "Then it doesn't matter which way you go," said the cat. "Well, I want to get somewhere," Alice added as an explanation. "Oh, well, you're sure to do that," said the cat, "if only you walk long enough." Now, that's Lewis Carroll being Lewis Carroll, but it's a pretty good description of how most of us navigate our entire lives. And here's the irony of this part of this story in my life. Why am I not a professional actor today after 9 years of training and practice? Well, a lot of reasons, probably not the least of them being that I don't have a tenth of the talent that most working actors have, and I also don't have the look that most casting agents are looking for most roles. But the ground level reason that makes all other reasons irrelevant is that at the end of 9 years, I realized I simply didn't want it enough. I didn't. Once I learned how hard it is, day after day, night after night, how cruel the world of casting can be, and it is cruel. How long really talented and dedicated people can wait to land a role in a show that will actually pay them for their effort, I realized that it wasn't, in my judgment, worth it. Not to me. Obviously, hundreds of thousands of people make a different judgment for themselves. But for me, I didn't want it that badly. So I moved away from acting and focused more on writing, but of course still had this issue of the big want, the powerful desire, very strongly in my mind. Because I saw at once that the playwright or screenwriter can do actors a huge favor by making the objectives of the characters as clear and as exciting as possible. Why give them something little to want when you can give them something big to want, right? And even better, what if you give them something big to want and make it nearly impossible for them to get it? That's the kind of role that an actor can sink his or her teeth into. And that's the kind of story we enjoy watching, isn't it? The struggle for the unlikely. Our hero bravely overcoming colossal obstacles to win through in the end. Because fictional characters are what they want. And slowly, over the years, I've come to believe that this too is not just about the art, but about real life. What obstacles will you have to overcome to get what you want? Isn't that your story? And mine and everybody else's? What do you want? How badly do you want it? Or to look at the question another way, if we are what we want, then who are you? I hesitated a moment ago to say that I didn't become a working actor because I didn't want it enough, and I'll tell you why. I still have a sort of knee-jerk resistance to being told that I didn't want something badly enough, and it comes from my upbringing, from my being raised in the ultra-conservative Church of Christ. The community in which I received all of my earliest theological training, when I started being groomed to be a Church of Christ minister practically from the cradle, was one in which a central concept is that all things are possible to people of faith, and God will not turn his back on those who love him. So when you are in dire straits, when times of need arise, ask him for whatever you want, and he will give it to you if you want it enough, and if your faith is sufficient. Which sounds beautiful. God will give you whatever you want and need. Except when he doesn't, in which case it's because you didn't do it right. Your faith was incomplete. You didn't want it badly enough. Which today makes me think of a scene from a play by one of my scriptwriting heroes, Christopher Durang, a play called Identity Crisis. In the play, there's a scene where a young woman tells about her experience seeing a production of the play Peter Pan. This is her report on seeing Peter Pan. She says, "You remember how in the second act, Tinkerbell drinks some poison that Peter's about to drink in order to save him? And Peter turns to the audience and he says, Tinkerbell's going to die because not enough people believe in fairies. But if every one of you out there will clap your hands real hard to show that you believe in fairies, maybe she won't die." Well, so we all started to clap. I clapped so long and hard that my palms hurt, and they even started to bleed. I clapped so hard. And then the actress playing Peter Pan turned to the audience again, and she said, "That wasn't enough. Tinkerbell's dead." And we all started to cry, and the ushers had to come help us out of the aisles into the street. I don't think any of us were ever the same after that experience. It certainly turned me against the theater. Well, what's so funny about that? I think it's the very idea that Peter Pan would betray us like that. Or that an actress in a children's theater production would deliberately scar her audience for life like that. So would a loving God do the same? I don't want anybody to tell me that I didn't get something I desperately wanted because I didn't want it enough, or that I didn't want it right, or I didn't get it because I didn't believe I'd get it. Because I know and have experienced that sometimes that's actually true, and I don't like to face up to that, but other times, I don't know, it's still just a hell of a thing to say to somebody. Right after the start of the new year, I read an article that I found very interesting, one of many, about why so many New Year's resolutions fail. There were lots of articles about that in January, you've seen. Let me just read part of this. Here's part of what this author said. If I ask you, what do you want out of life? And you say something like, I want to be happy and have a great job and a family, and, it's so ubiquitous that it doesn't even mean anything. A more interesting question, a question that maybe you've never considered before, is what pain do you want in your life? What are you willing to struggle for? Because that seems to be a greater determinant of how our lives turn out. Everybody wants to have an amazing job and financial independence, but not everyone wants to suffer through 60-hour work weeks or long commutes or obnoxious paperwork to navigate arbitrary corporate hierarchies. People want to be rich without the risk, without the sacrifice, without the delayed gratification necessary to accumulate wealth. Everybody wants to have great sex and an awesome relationship, but not everybody's willing to go through the tough conversations, the awkward silences, the hurt feelings, and the emotional psychodrama to get there. So they settle. They settle and they wonder what if for years and years until the question morphs from what if into, was that it? The cost of getting what you want out of every aspect of life can be so much higher than we imagine. Which, as I'm about to turn 55, I'm wondering, why don't they teach us that in school? And isn't that something that all of us, when we were young, needed to be taught? Just last week, as if she knew I was going to talk about this today, one of our Facebook friends posted this observation on her Facebook timeline. I just love this. She said, when Paul McCartney wrote Hey Jude, he didn't mention the cost involved in taking a sad song and making it better. He didn't mention the pearls before swine feeling of working to get people on board with making the sad song better when they don't believe it's possible. And then there's the horror of discovering that some people prefer the song sad and will even profit from it, so they'll fight your efforts to make it better. I love Hey Jude, she said, but it's missing a budget section. Well, maybe you can see where I'm going with all this. We're at a crisis point, this little group of ours. Even on a day like today, where it seems to me like the room is full, half these seats are still empty. And you know we can't continue like this. Years ago, there was something great going on here, but the economy did a nosedive, and a lot of our people had to go somewhere else to find work. Well, now Hickory is on the move again, and new jobs and new opportunities, and new people are moving here, people looking for a community like this, I think. And they're going to keep coming, and I want us to be here forever so we can keep on offering them what they need. That's what I want. And you may know I grew up a preacher's kid and was an associate pastor for years, so I have always been around the process of trying to keep a church growing, first one church and then another. And the folks who study these things say that a community like ours, for the resources that we have available here and now, this congregation would be optimal at something like 75 to 100 members. That means we need 40 new members, and 60 would be ideal. And yes, I want that. So go ahead and ask me how badly you want that. Because I've actually had somebody ask me, how are you going to bring 40 to 60 new members to this church? And the answer is, I'm not. And neither is any other individual in this church. And not because we don't want it badly enough, but because we're not a coven of witches. We don't have magical powers that can cause people to spontaneously appear in our midst. But, I do want that badly enough to spend a great deal of my time, pretty much every day, doing some kind of work on our web presence, our website, our email accounts, our Facebook page, our meetup site, the email newsletter that I hope you're all getting. And it's rewarding. One of the reasons I keep doing it is because it's rewarding work. Time and again, we keep having visitors come through and say that they found us on the web. Yeah. So I wanted enough to give time to the committee that figures out who's standing behind this pulpit Sunday after Sunday, and to volunteer to do it myself as often as I think you can stand it. Do I want those 40 to 60 members enough to ring doorbells like the Mormons and the Jehovah's Witnesses, whose numbers are growing all the time, apparently because of that kind of assertive evangelism? To go door to door around Hickory asking people if they've heard the good news about Unitarian Universalism? No. I got to be honest with you, that is beyond my limit. At this time, now I've noticed I'm changing all the time. Maybe one day I'll be that kind of person, but I never have been before, and I'm not now. But you know, there may be people in this church who are. I'm not asking for volunteers. Not yet. Do I want to double or triple our membership enough to travel everywhere with this handful of little posters that I made a couple of years ago and put them up anywhere around this region that I possibly can? Well, I started out with good intentions doing that back when I made these, and I just ran out of steam. Yeah. But I'd love to be a part of a team of people doing it. Above all, I have to ask myself, and I hope you ask yourself the same question. Do you want to see this church grow enough to be committed to being here every Sunday morning and to be doing everything in your power to make sure that everyone else here is getting what they need? And by that I mean, will you come to this place ready to take an active role in meeting the spiritual needs of another human, not just sometimes, but every time? Because, you know, the more I get to know all the people here, the more I'm struck by what an amazing group of intelligent, articulate, fascinating people you are. And if you're not getting to know everyone else here, then you're missing out on something. And I believe this with all my heart. When visitors come here and they experience love between us and mutual support and striving for spiritual growth, they'll want to come back. I think they'll want to stay. But they won't get a strong sense of who we are if we don't have that sense of ourselves. So I pose the question for you. If we are what we want, then who are we? What does this congregation want? And how badly do we want it?